How many of you have perfect hearing? How many of you have had your ears deceive you? Yeah. Last summer, my whole family went to Portland, Oregon to celebrate my son's wedding. And of course, there was a lot of distractions and things going on, but it was a beautiful time because the weather was absolutely perfect. Every single day, perfect weather. And every night, I could hear it rain a little. And I thought, wow, it's raining at night, but every morning is beautiful and sunny and perfect. And after a couple of days, I commented to my family and I said, this weather is amazing. It's beautiful every single day. There aren't even any puddles outside, but I hear rain every night. And then our daughter said, well, I don't really think you're hearing rain. She has an app on her phone that plays all kinds of white noise, and she likes to sleep to the sound of a gentle rain shower. And her bedroom was next door to our bedroom. So all night long, I would hear this gentle rain, and I thought it was raining. And then there was a window on one side of the house that we were staying in where there was raindrops every morning on that window. So I was absolutely sure I was hearing rain even when she showed me her phone. So the next morning we get up and we look at that window and there are raindrops on that window, but there are no raindrops on any other windows. So we look out and the neighbor has a garden with a sprinkler. And the sprinkler is just close enough to get that window wet. So I absolutely, completely believed that I was hearing rain, but never one time did I go outside and look up. I never went out to see for sure if it was raining. I just trusted what I had heard. Now you're probably wondering, what in the world does that have to do with our reading today about the rock? And it has everything to do with it. Because the name Simon means hearing. It means one who hears. So keep that in mind as we dig into this reading. What we're going to find in this reading is a verse that is, according to one scholar, the most contested verse in the New Testament, the one that has been the most fought over. But before we get there, we need to go back and get just a little bit of context about what's happening. In the paragraph right before the reading that Gary shared with us this morning, Jesus is teaching his disciples as he does. And he said to them, beware of the yeast of the Pharisees and the Sadducees. And when the disciples heard Jesus say yeast, they thought he meant bread. And then they thought he must be hungry for bread. And then they thought, oh no, we did not pack any bread. So they got all upset about a word, and it didn't even mean what they thought it meant. They were hearing the rain, but nobody actually looked out to see if it was raining. If Jesus ever had a really big eye roll, I think it was during that section, right? Just, oh God, these are the disciples you gave me? And then he has to begin to teach them. I wasn't talking about bread. When I said yeast, I was talking about the teaching of the Pharisees and the Sadducees. What you hear them say, beware. Beware of what they are saying. Be careful of what you're hearing from them, because it is not entirely correct, right? Then we get to our reading today. And Jesus said to his disciples, what do people say about me? What do you hear in the marketplace? What is the word on the streets? Who do people say that I am? And the disciples answer, and they tell Jesus all of the different options. We heard that you're John the Baptist. We heard that you're Elijah. We heard that you're Jeremiah or some other prophet. And let's just side note here that all of those people I listed are deceased. And some scholars say, does this mean the disciples are open to reincarnation of some sort? Like this spirit that was in Elijah now is alive again in Jesus? We don't know, but it's something fun to think about when you don't have anything else to think about. Interesting stuff. So then Simon Peter says, So then Jesus said, who do you say that I am? And Simon Peter says, you are the Messiah, the Son of the living God. Beautiful line, right? Just so beautiful. Beautifully spoken, beautifully said. Now, before we move into the rest of the story, let's just pause for a second. And let's remember that just a couple chapters ago, when Jesus was walking on the water, the disciples were all in the boat saying, "Truly, this is the Son of God." So that's not new. But what is new is the word Messiah. We haven't seen that yet. And for Peter to say, "You are the Messiah," that's the important part here. But the other thing I want you to notice is Peter's name. His name was Simon when he was called by Jesus. And all through Matthew's gospel, almost every other chapter, there's a reference to Peter. But here in this story, Jesus brings back that original name, Simon. It's almost as if he's giving us a little flashback. Remember that this guy's name was Simon? Now it's going to be Peter. So all of a sudden, instead of just Peter responding, we have Simon Peter responding to Jesus, that you are the Messiah, the Son of God. So think about that for a moment, and then let's move on. We'll come back to it. So Jesus hears what Simon Peter says, and Jesus responds by saying, "Blessed are you, Simon, son of Jonah, for you did not hear that in the marketplace. You did not hear that on Facebook. You did not watch a video on YouTube. You did not listen to anybody else. You heard it from God. God spoke to you. And because of that, your name now will be Cephas, which is Peter, which means rock. And upon this rock I will build my church." Jesus said those words, and we have fought about that line for centuries. The Roman Catholic Church looks at that text when Jesus says to Peter, "Upon this rock I will build my church," and they said, "Oh, Peter is the first pope. And every single generation is going to have a successor to Peter. Every single year of the world's existence, we are going to have a person who represents Peter over the whole church, because that is the rock." And that's where all of those popes come from. They all go back to Peter. I thought this little guy was going to come all the way up here. Hey, Milo. I thought Milo was going to come up again and help us preach. So then the Protestants come along, and the Protestants like to protest, and they say, nope, we don't think so. We don't think it's Peter himself personally that's the rock. We think it's his faith. Peter has great faith, and that's what Jesus is calling out. The church is built upon this faith. And then others come along and said, nope, it's not just the faith, it's that proclamation. It's saying that Jesus is the Son of the living God. That's got to be the rock upon which the church is formed. That's got to be it, right? One of those three. We're always trying to take Jesus and put him into the boxes that we make so we can make him into our own image. But he never wants to go in those boxes. There's always some reason why one of those things is not going to work. And as I studied the text, I found several reasons I didn't think it could be Peter or Peter's faith or the words that Peter said. None of those things, in my mind, really are the rock. Because Peter, just one paragraph or two later, says something to Jesus, and Jesus says, "Get thee behind me, Satan." He calls him adversary. You don't have in mind the things of God, you have in mind the things of men, so get behind me. That's the foundation of our church, that guy that Jesus called Satan? And then later, this same Peter that says, "You are the Messiah, the Son of the living God," is going to say, "I don't know that man," 3 times. And we know that Jesus has called Peter's faith into question already. So to me, none of those things feel right. So I began to dig a little bit more into the text. And I kept coming back to that name, Simon. Because all the way up to chapter 16 in Matthew's gospel, this guy has been Peter. And all of a sudden today, Jesus calls him Peter, or Simon Peter. So why does he bring back that name, Simon? Well, then when I found out that Simon means hearing, or one who hears, and I looked really closely at what Jesus said to him, Jesus said to him, Nobody else told you this. You heard it from God. And upon that rock, I will build my church. Upon the hearing from God, upon that divine connection, do you think that would be strong enough to build a church? Because what is a church, after all, but a whole group of people who come together because they want to hear from God. They want understanding. They want hope. They want connection. They want to know why they are in this world, what their purpose is. To me, it's the hearing that is the rock. Now, in 2026, that is easier said than done. It is really, really difficult to hear the voice of God. Some of us will live our whole lives without ever feeling like we've heard it, at least not in some supernatural way. But it is there to be heard, I am convinced. The problem is all the white noise around us. The problem is all of the voices in the marketplace, on Facebook, on X, on YouTube, on TV, on Fox News, on MSNBC, all of the voices telling us something, and almost every single voice is telling us to be afraid or to be angry. Do you remember the way of love and the way of fear? All those voices are trying to keep us trapped in the way of fear. Because if we will be upset with other people, if we can be angry with them, if we cannot understand them, if we can fight against them, we will be so busy fighting and arguing that we will never look up. We will never listen to God's voice. We will let all those other voices dictate how we think and how we feel. And you know, it's just about money when it comes down to it. There is no evil news media out there who is trying to poison your brain. I don't think they're that smart. All they know is this: if you're angry and if you're afraid, you will tune in more often because it's like a drug. And then they'll get more advertising dollars and they'll be richer. I mean, it's that simple. Now, if there is this evil group of people, the 1% who have all the resources, and if they're actually watching this unfold, they've got to be thrilled, because if we all can just keep fighting each other, we will never notice what's going on. We'll just keep hearing the sound of the rain and never go outside to actually check to see if it's raining, because we're bothered and upset. And that keeps us from hearing God's voice. Now, some of you, I know, have a rich prayer life. You have a time every day that you spend just to feed your spirit, just to feel connected to God. But for some of us, this hour is it. This is the only time that we're quiet enough when we can really listen. And it is a muscle, and after you stop using it, after a while, you can't hear anymore. So I want you to really think about this. If that rock upon which the church is built, if it is hearing, if it is connection, our church should be all about teaching people how to hear, how to connect, how to listen, and how to interpret what they're hearing, right? And it's got to be more than 1 hour a week. So what is your rock? What is it that you go to again and again and again so that you feel connected to God, so that you can hear that voice, or at least try? That's what I do. I call it centering prayer, but honestly, some days when I'm praying, there is like a bee's nest in my brain. I cannot turn that thing off. It just keeps, I'm just going from one thing to the other, and every time I notice that I am no longer practicing my prayer, I have to bring myself back with a word. I have a word that's normal for centering prayer, that you have a word that anchors you, so that when you notice that your brain's going somewhere else, you can pull it back. And centering prayer is all about listening. And we do it here once a month. And the longer you try it, the better you get at quieting all of the white noise in your brain so that you can hear. Somehow Simon Peter did that. He quieted his brain enough so he could hear the truth that this was the Messiah, the Son of the living God. And when he heard that, that was the rock upon which our church is built. So what is the rock for you? What is it that will bring you back so that you're connected to God, so that you can hear?